me address the atheist point. I commonly say, I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. I could never accept the presupposition that the natural world that we live in, the physics that we have discovered, the mathematics that keeps our entire being together, this is all an act of randomness. That takes a lot more faith than believing in a higher power or a natural order or an omniscient, omnipotent designer that put all this together. So I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. Let's start there. Now, it's possible to do good things if you're an atheist, but no, I don't believe it's possible to conduct yourself in a regular moral order if you do not believe in a God, and I'll tell you why. Because as soon as you abolish the idea of a higher power, then all of a sudden you become the most important person. It's a very selfish way of thinking. The final thing that I say to atheists, I ask the question, I say, do you hope you're wrong? And so if the answer to that question is, yes, I hope I'm wrong, at least there's a starting point. At least they might actually want to have a conversation, and you might be able to inquire towards a path to discovery. Now, if they say, no, I hope I'm right, boy, what a tough existence that must be. You're trying to tell me you never want to see your loved ones again? You're trying to tell me you don't want to believe in ultimate justice? You're trying to tell me that you don't think there's anything more than this broken world that we live in, and that you take your own belief in a higher place than the actual betterment of those around you? That's a very, very difficult argument for me to accept. And so, to answer your question, my personal opinion is that you could do good things, but it's very difficult to lead yourself in a consistent moral order if you do not believe in a higher power.
Hello, everybody. It is Saturday, September the 13th, and we're in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, live at WPD 15 ABC studios. Welcome to this special broadcast. There's so much talk about crime and how to resolve crime, how to bring it under control, make our cities, our communities, and our homes safe. In the nation's capital, our president brought in the National Guard, flooded the city with the FBI, the DEA, and ICE. And let me tell you, they can talk about all the statistics in the world, all the data in the world. Everyone knows exactly in their communities whether they're safe or not, no matter what the stats may say. And I will tell you, DC is the safest and the cleanest it has ever been, in my opinion. No smell of marijuana, no homelessness. I mean, when you look at what happened recently in our neighboring state in Charlotte, North Carolina, where DeCarlos Brown just absolutely brutally just terrorized and killed this innocent Ukrainian refugees on a rail train. You ask yourself, how does that happen? And so we're on the road in South Carolina talking to local law enforcement. Jimmy Richardson is the Horry County Solicitor, and Brian Wallace is the sheriff from my hometown, Marion County. You know, I have a theory. When I grew up as a kid on the family farm, first we were taught to respect authority. We respected law enforcement. We respected the military, our teachers, anybody, our elders in authority. You know, my sister sometimes, who produces for me, send me videos, and you see people spitting on police, kicking at police, yelling expletives at police. There's just no respect. And maybe it started with defunding the police, but when you lose respect for authority, when you lose respect for people who put their lives on the line every day, and what helps this is, Jimmy, is the fact that these criminals are smart. They go to court, they know these judges is not going to do nothing but slap on the wrist. And sometimes, most of the times, law enforcement do their jobs. They arrest them. But they're right back on the street in 48 and 72 hours, and they just laugh at them. How are you going to respect somebody arresting you when you know they're putting you back out on the streets, not to commit the same crime, but a worse crime? So I want to start this conversation with talking about the diminishing respect for authority, and how the courts and judges also play a role in the fact that crime is so out of control. We'll start with you, Mr. Solicitor.
Armstrong, I think you can go back one step from that. What if you're a witness to a crime, and as soon as a person gets locked up, they're right back out? What does that do to you as a witness? It's very hard to get people to come to court and testify when you knowing that the system is going to let them out and be right back in the community. So I agree with you. I think it's very multi-layered. I think first and foremost, where we plant our feet in the morning, we have got to make that the best place available. And if you're part of the judicial system, like you know, in Horry and Marion, Florence, in this area, you are going to pay a horrible price for whatever crime you've committed. That may not be so in other parts of the country. And it takes just that much of letting somebody get away with something. You know, when they tried this whole progressive prosecutor thing in other parts of the country, well, we spend so much money chasing down shoplifting. Let's just quit with the shoplifting. Let's just quit with the possession of marijuana. Let's quit with all of that and let's focus somewhere else. But when you allow that to happen, what it does to the community is it says, look, like you said, a slap on the wrist, I can get away with that. Now I've moved the line and I'm going to go further and further and further. And the first thing that we've got to do at law enforcement is hold the line wherever we're planted. So you're not going to get away with that in Horry, in Georgetown, in Marion, in Florence. You're not going to get away with that. So if you're planning on it, you're better off going somewhere else.
Let me challenge you.
Okay.
You know, I know so many people, doesn't matter about their socioeconomic background, they love coming to Myrtle Beach for vacation, for golfing. All I hear about Myrtle Beach now is so crime-driven, it's so out of control, that it reminds them of a big city. So you say they dare not do that here. I don't know what your jurisdiction over Horry County, but Myrtle Beach has the same problem. Why?
Yeah. Well, part of it is most of the crime that's coming into our actual crime stats are dropping, believe it or not. But most of the people that come into Horry County are not the tourists that are coming here to commit crimes. It is people from about an hour away that are coming in from Shelby, coming in from Charlotte, coming in from parts of North Carolina, day trippers. But the people that are coming to spend $4,000 or $5,000 and eat ice cream, they're not committing crimes. That's not the people that are committing the crimes.
But how do you address these criminals that are committing the crime?
You have got to absolutely destroy, like the shooting in Myrtle Beach that began the summer. And then there was a shootout on Myrtle Beach. That hasn't come about yet, but you're going to see them pay a horrendous price for that crime. And the messaging has got to be, when you come here, you can't just forget about it. Well, that happened. Those people are going to pay a horrible price. I'll promise you that.
What is horrible? What's the price?
Like yesterday, there was a shooting. We got to court. Nobody died. 15 years, just like that. That is not a slap on the wrist. That is not where you're going to spend 4 years in prison and get out. That is going to be at least 12 years before you come up for parole. And it is shocking to our neighbors in North Carolina. It's shocking to people that come in, because Armstrong, I have them all the time say, I'll just plead to that. And I'll say, you don't want to plead to that. This is different. This is 85% before you're eligible for parole here.
You know, listen, so people say we need to enforce, we need new laws. You don't need new laws.
No.
Every law you have is on the books. Right. What about these criminals? You cut in these deals, they put them back on the street, you're giving these bonds, they don't serve their time. And listen, 5% of the people commit 90% of the crime.
Easily.
Why?
Easily. And that's part two. And we can't do anything, like I said, we in law enforcement have got to grow where our feet touch in the morning. But we're not going to continue to be a decent nation if we don't get back to family values like you talked about. Now, once a youngin gets 18, 19, 20, 14, 15, and you're saying government fix them, that's already a problem. the only fix that Brian's got or that Jimmy's got is to put you in prison. I don't get to paddle, I don't get to spank, I don't get to correct the actions at 3, 4, and 5 like you got growing up, like I got growing up. I don't get to do that. I don't go into the homes. At some point, and this is a longer term solution, but we have got to get back to the Judeo-Christian values of the 80s, of the 70s, of even the early 90s, which is totally gone now. That if you're relying on the government to fix your kid at 14, 15, 16, there's already a problem.
So Brian, even in Marion County, my beloved hometown, you've got these crime rings that is just running rampant. They're organized, it's coordinated, they steal, and there's a sense that you cannot get it under control. Is it a lack of resources? Is it like you don't have the capacity to hold them? Why is it that small towns are also becoming a crime epidemic?
Yeah, you're exactly right, and I'm gonna go back to what you said initially and what the solicitor said. We've got to get back on a long-term solution. We've got to get back to the kitchen table with the family unit, the family structure. And you can't wait for law enforcement, as the solicitor said, to fix the problem. So we have seen an increase in small towns, and a lot of this occurred during COVID and after COVID. And one problem we have, just like in DC, where they put the troops and law enforcement, boots on the ground. And we've got to have boots on the ground to fight the day-to-day stuff, the day-to-day crimes, and let folks know that we mean business. Counties in a rural setting, different than Horry, but we struggle with staffing. We struggle with trying to find officers who want to get in that profession. But to fix the problem, a lot of times we're more proactive than reactive, but the schools can't fix the problem. Law enforcement can't fix the problem. We've got a parent problem across this nation. And that's where we have to start at. Start at that kitchen table. Start with the family unit. And
what is the definition of family unit today? What is that?
It varies. It varies. But you've got to have a positive role model.
You got to have a man in that house.
A man, I agree with you there.
These mothers, and I could be kidding here.
I think mothers try.
They can't do it.
Yeah, it's
They're
tough.
intimidated. They're afraid of their own children. Are you kidding me?
You're right. You're exactly right. They are.
So what do we do?
Yeah.
You got to put them away.
Yeah. You
got to really send a message that this cannot be tolerated. I don't know if South Carolina needs to build an Alcatraz or Alcatraz, but something has happened. And when we come back, I'm going to talk about this. I'm like many people, I don't see it getting better. Yeah. I don't see the family unit improving. If it doesn't better, what is there for law enforcement to do? This is the Armstrong Williams Show. We're from our Myrtle Beach studios in Horry, South Carolina. Don't go away. We'll be back. Brian Wallace is sheriff of my hometown of Marion. Jimmy Richardson is the solicitor for Horry County. Listen, there are two things that I would argue. You can never pay teachers enough, and you can never pay enough for law enforcement, because the two go hand in hand. Because if you pay teachers, you take care of educating your children, you give them a structure where they really have a real education, where they have real skills, it lessens crime, it lessens self-worth, it lessens sexual trafficking. But if you're not paying law enforcement, they're not going to put themselves on the line every day, and with this kind of disrespect and just the arrogance of these youth who laugh at them. So obviously, there's a shortage of staff, there's a shortage of law enforcement. How do we get the state to understand that we need to allocate more resources for what you do?
Yeah, when we look at, and I'm going to say Marion County, because that's what I'm more familiar with. And there's a difference between Marion and Florence and Horry County. Rural counties in South Carolina, across this nation, we struggle with funding. And I am a strong believer that public safety across this country is a prime function of government, core function of government, and has to be funded. So when we look and go in front of county council and we ask, whether it's EMS, law enforcement, detention deputies, fire and rescue, those folks have to be funded. And we've got to have good folks in there, and we've got to have boots on the ground to do just what you're saying, to enforce the laws we have on the books. We don't need more laws. We just need officers out there enforcing the laws that we have.
Tell us what deters crime, what actually works, Jimmy.
I think, let me get one sentence for Brian. I promise you, because I'm friends with him, I promise you Brian would never, if President Trump offered federal troops, he'd be tickled.
Welcome.
It wouldn't be
You would
this.
take them.
Oh,
Yeah,
man,
absolutely.
Lord,
Tell
yeah.
us why.
Horry County, I
Yeah.
feel like Horry
We'll
County.
be glad to have
Because it's not about red state or blue state. Tell us why those resources can help you in your fight. Because I'll tell you this, if it were not for the National Guards, DC stopping homicides, car theft, carjacking, petty theft would not have happened. Law enforcement is depleted. It allowed law enforcement, it allowed the National Guard to go and take care of the mall, the federal buildings, to clean up, because they really don't have the authority or the training to fight the crime in these communities. But it did free up those resources.
They've got the presence.
Yes, the
And when the presence is there, that's a deterrent. If they see a police car, when you're driving down the road and you see a police car and you speeding, you're going to slow down. But when you don't see that police car or you don't see a presence in the community, that's when the crime occurs. Just like DC, they've got those troops probably on every corner, stationed throughout. I haven't been, I don't know. But you see, with boots on the ground, you see lower crime rates. If you've got the presence of law enforcement, that deters crime. But it's only a deterrent while you see it.
You'd be crazy to go out and start a gunfight with National Guard or Marion County Police standing there. That's why they go in the dark to do all of this stuff. That's why they gang up but they still don't go around and try to go after or around the police. They want to do all of this stuff. They want to get away with it. Yeah. The more officers that you've got out there, you're talking about back in the day in Times Square. That was a hellhole. But when they brought in all of those troops, man, all of these places that they were getting $50 a square foot, now it's $150 or it's $1,000 a square foot. Property values, everything goes up. But it's just, I'm not going to do that. Boy, you hear them on the jail calls. That place is hot. Don't go around showing off in Marion. Don't go around showing off in Myrtle Beach. That place is hot. Cameras can do it. They've got a bunch of cameras. We've got to get that message out, because I promise you, you could, in Myrtle Beach, if you do a crime, it's going to be caught on every camera. Now, they don't have that in Marion. Right. They don't have that in Conway. But there's a camera on every inch of Myrtle Beach. You don't get away with nothing around there. And people are going to jail for long periods of time. One of the places that we are failing, and we represent, I don't know if they do in Marion, but we go to every bond hearing and advocate to keep these people in jail. In the federal system, we don't have the lift capacity in the federal system that we've got in the state system, but with the troops, with the DOJ coming in to help in like DC, that's what they're addressing. That's why you're seeing a difference. But if you've got those and you open up those federal courts, those people don't bond in and out in federal court. I'll tell you, we passed bond reform about 2 years ago. It's the first major thing we've done in South Carolina in probably decades. And Armstrong, in doing that, our jail, the immediate growth pain, we were housing around 650 every day at the J. Reuben Long Detention Center. Now it's over 900. So for violent crimes or gun charges, they are staying in jail a lot longer. And that is making a difference. It makes a tremendous difference for the people that call this area home. A unique problem for DC, a unique problem for New York, and to a lesser extent for Myrtle Beach, is you've got people that are coming in from other areas that it's going to take them a minute to hear, this place is hot. Don't go around showing off. Don't do that here because you're on camera. Don't do that here because there's a National Guard person on that corner. Don't show out. It takes a little longer, but it is doable.
What does it take to get more people enthusiastic about being law enforcement officers?
Yeah, you know, we try to do a good job of going into the schools and talking with the students to start or show, hey, law enforcement, helping others, helping the community, being a positive role model in the community. But you know, we've seen, and it's just not here in South Carolina, across the nation you've seen a decline, and I think a lot of that goes back not to just in the last couple of years, but from years where they disrespect for the police, and they see that, getting spit on, getting cussed out, getting assaulted. I think the trend, the pendulum may be swinging back the other way. I do think I see, and I've seen it, we struggled during COVID with workforce. We struggled during that time. But I do see things getting a little better. I see the pendulum swinging back. It didn't all change overnight, and it's not going to correct overnight.
Can you do anything about restoring the family unit, parental involvement? And can we do something about having men more involved in key roles, the household, in the churches, in the schools? Because it's a fact, where there are male role models and men involved, there's less crime. How do we change that dynamic?
Yeah, it's, I don't know, Jimmy, I mean, it's tough. It really is. You know, I'm of the Baptist faith, and, you know, when I talk to pastors and stuff, and, you know, they're preaching what needs to be preached. But the people that need to hear it aren't there.
Is it because they want free things? And do we glorify violence and killing now? Social media, you can go on and learn how to kill somebody, how to rob somebody. I mean, you saw how they went around when these athletes was traveling and these gangs would go and just loot their homes. Is it celebrated? Look at what happened to Mangini, who's killed the healthcare CEO in in New York City, and all of a sudden they raised tons of money for him. Look at what happened to this Dick Carlos Brown after he murdered the woman on the rail system in Charlotte, North Carolina. There's a GoFund. They had almost raised $80,000, and GoFund said, no, we're shutting this now. We're not going to glorify this violence, and we're going to refund everybody their money back.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you, it may seem daunting, but it is doable. It really is doable. That's the way it's supposed to be, and because that is the structure that it's supposed to be, it is doable. What we've got to do, you know, I might get fired for saying this, but especially in tobacco country, or what used to be, but when we settled in and said tobacco is causing cancer, people stopped smoking cigarettes all the time. You know what I'm saying? People were more aware. All of these things, we can change the public perception. And what we've got to do, not only with violence, not only with gun violence, you can't even get, we talking about police officers, you can't even get people to play at Marion football.
I don't think I got the point you were trying to make with the smoking. You got to help me out. I think I went over. Help me understand. What are you saying?
What I'm saying is we can change perspective.
Oh, and change behavior.
By changing perspective, we can change behavior.
Yeah.
And what we got to do is not only quit glorifying gunplay, but we also got to quit glorifying knocking every girl up on the block. We got to
make you a man.
Yeah, that ain't got nothing to do with being a man.
Shooting somebody, anybody can shoot.
We've got to show expectations.
Right.
And this is the right way to do it. And once we start promoting the right way, people will gradually come to that. But if we keep saying this is the way, that this is the new way, and that's all hocus pocus stuff, that kept us going for well over 200 years, that old way.
But Brian, as a sheriff, I know you and Jimmy, you've got to have your insecurities because you see things and are exposed to things that few people see. You get to see what is really out there and what you're fighting. You know they're monsters.
Oh, yeah.
They're
Absolutely.
demonic. Forget about being mentally ill. These people know exactly what they're doing, and they'll kill you if you look at them the wrong way. I mean, what you're dealing with is just something that we've not faced in a very long time. Do you still have hope that you can sort of get this under control, protect your communities, and let people feel that they can be safe again?
Absolutely, absolutely. I have that hope and that faith that the best days are ahead of us. I really do. And I see, and I'm being honest with you, I see that pendulum changing on the law enforcement and supporting our officers and the, I wouldn't say heavy-handed law enforcement, but really, if you do a crime, there's consequences. And I see that trickling down from the federal government. You see, just like you're talking about the troops in D.C., you see that trickle down to the states, and where you see that, hey, if you do a crime, you're going to put in jail. One problem we have right now, we're still, I don't know about Horry, but Florence, we're still backlogged in the court system. We have so many, hundreds of people on the docket.
Well, they're understaffed.
They're understaffed.
They can't handle the case.
You said, well, we need more court. Well, we got to have judges. You got to have court reporters. You got to have time because we're in a
That's the
circuit
problem with
Florence.
processing immigration, because we have so few immigration judges across the country.
Yeah,
that's
same
the
problem.
same issue. Yeah.
So what you have several hundred people waiting to go to court that need to be in court. It's not fair for the victims to wait 3, 4, 5 years for the defendant, the suspect, to go to court. You know, we need more court. In Horry, they probably have court every week down here, but we only have it 8 times a week, 8 weeks out of the year.
Wow.
In Marion County. Next year looks a little better in 26, but we don't have enough court. And I'm not saying nothing against the solicitor's office, but you got to have judges, you got to have staff, you got to have court
That has to
reporters.
change.
Yeah, we got to change. There's just too much time.
I want to say this as we wrap this up and turn to art and culture and celebrating Charleston, South Carolina, which is one of our most famous cities in the country. You know, I give President Trump this. At least, say whatever you want to say, he's telling these criminals, we're not going to tolerate this anymore. We're going to shut you down. Just like he just called for the death penalty for DeCarlos Brown for that brutal killing in Charlotte. Criminals need to know that there's a new sheriff in town. And that we're not going to make excuses for your criminal behavior. I don't know, it doesn't matter what people think about the National Guard. What matters is everybody wants to feel safe.
And everybody deserves to be safe.
Be safe.
Everybody
so it's the right
deserves that, right.
message that it's not going to be, it's unacceptable. We cannot normalize criminals.
And brother, that is what I was saying. That is the perception. Once you change the perception, we'll change as a society. But the perception's got to change, and that's what Brian's talking about. That perception is changing. And I'm telling you, it is a pendulum, and we're swinging back to the right. I guarantee you, because we have looked at what it looks like in progressive cities, and that won't work.
This is why criminals go to no-gun zones. This is why criminals are not going to come to our homes, because they know we're packing heat. They know they'll be killed. It's just a fact. I'm legal, I've concealed and carry. They know exactly what they do. They understand the laws better than the lawyers sometimes. And so when they know that their lives are going to be threatened, when they're trying to rob people and take their lives, they're not going to those places. It's no different than the president saying, we're coming at you. And we're going to get you. We're going to put a stop to this.
Oh, amen. And I think that we are tracking in the right direction. I think we're doing a lot of the things right. I think that even if people wanted to believe that a more progressive movement could work, you've seen now that it cannot, that cashless bail, that doesn't work. All of these things, and we've got to remind people that has been tried, it doesn't work. And if you truly want to live in Portland, then they got cheap land in Portland now. It's a lot cheaper than it was a few years ago. If you want to go to places that are crime-ridden, it's wide open. The problem is they're not moving to Portland. They're not moving to Los Angeles. They're moving away from that. And they're coming here. And what we're saying is, you're welcome, but your ideas are not. You're not going to bring that
criminal behavior here. Listen, Jimmy and Brian, I wish you both well. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to turn to a little more relaxing topics, art, culture, and much more. I'm Armstrong Williams. Don't go away.
It is easier to build up strong children than to try and repair broken men.
The streets are plagued with crime, violence. There's a lot of poverty, and it's all a result of lack of education that's happening in our schools. So it really is a crisis.
We come from very different political perspectives, but we've come to the same conclusion, and that is there is a crisis in the classroom. Children are being deprived of quality of life because they're being deprived of a good education. We must solve this problem. It's incumbent upon all of us to join hands together to get this done.
We can't afford to wait one more day before we address these issues, because every day we lose another child.
Let's stop the politicking. Let's stop the games. Let's really do something to give these kids a real chance at life and being a part of that American dream.
We need accountability for funding. Many of the districts where you're seeing very low test scores, students graduating with very low literacy and math comprehension rates, they are receiving a lot of funding. So where is the money going where our kids aren't being adequately educated?
If you believe every child is deserving of a quality education, please go to educationjusticefoundation.com. And welcome back to the broadcast. So obviously, I'm a huge art collective around the world, and we have museums. We're establishing one here in Marion, South Carolina. But people always talk about the Garden of Eden, and everybody's trying to duplicate those great gardens. And we understand when the president talks about beautifying Washington again and making it clean with fountains and cleaning it up, that has special meaning to you. ERIK Healy, as someone who's in the world of gardening and beautification. Talk about your business and talk about why people are so drawn to your art.
Yeah, so horticulture in landscaping, it's a form of art. I think people have more pride in places when they're pretty. And I think that's something that Trump is trying to instill again by cleaning up some of these places. Whether it's a drift of flowers or a big drift of ornamental grasses, or topiary, a sculpture, that type of art. You see, there's a great topiary artist, world renowned in Bishopville, South Carolina, Pearl Fryer. Any of these things add to a sense of place, community, and things of that nature.
Clifford, now you're more of a sculptor. You work with your hands and you create things from scratch. Talk about your journey in the world of sculpture.
So the journey really, it begins back in my childhood, I would say, but it wasn't so much what I wanted to do. My family, I'm in service, I was in the Marine Corps, and I had some different ideas for myself and where I want to go, but as God, from my perspective, everything goes through the lens of a Christian. And so he called me into it, really. It's not that I asked for it, it's something I developed. And through time, I was, one instance would be when I was in school, Armstrong, I was in Poznan, Poland, and I was sculpting on an exchange program. And it was right then that I was working on a portrait that I knew that's a direction that I wanted to go with my life. And moving forward, the challenge has been evolving in my work, and also it is market driven, so I have to encompass that part of my artwork in the world.
How do you create in what you do the visual interest in the mood? Where does that come from?
Again, everything through my lens is through my Christian and my faith. And so when I look at the lens you mentioned, when I look through, similarly to how you're made through plants, I look at nature. Everything's derived from His creation. And so when you have that perspective, when I look at nature, all of the keys are there to create everything, whether it's through the human portrait, the anatomy, God's creation, whether it's a water feature. So all of that originates from that kind of perspective. So that's how I create. I look at whether it's a commercial driven or if there's a functional piece, a fountain, or a portrait. It all comes from that origin.
So Eric, talk about the themes of color, texture, and form in what you do.
Yeah, so when we start looking at a landscape, we first look at, what's the function, or what do they want the function to be? And then we start laying out the different patterns, the textures, the colors. For us personally, in a larger setting, we're going to go with larger drifts, big swaths of color. And then color comes and goes. In order for something to look consistently good, you need to have texture. So we like to say, if you can take a picture in black and white and that landscape looks pretty, you've done a good job, because you have color. You obviously don't have color, but you have texture, you have contrast.
Talk about, I find the best art, and I know people, they think about this deeply. I travel the world, and one of the things I'm fascinated by more than anything else is the artwork of a cemetery. It says so much to me when you look at cemeteries, because they're so different. But sometimes to me, they're the perfect garden, they're the perfect texture, they're the perfect formation, because people realize that is the final resting place of their loved ones. But for people that create these grounds, what goes into it to me is almost majestic, the art form that goes into it.
Yeah, I agree. I was recently in Louisville, Kentucky, and there's a cemetery there called Cave Hill. It's famous around the world. It's a world-class arboretum, and they have probably 10, 15 staff of horticulturalists, arboriculturalists that just curate the landscape there. And when you're walking through this place, it started back in the 1850s, and it's still active. It's still being planted and managed. But it is one of the most serene places I've ever walked through.
And I get that when I walk through Arlington Cemetery. Mm-hmm. I don't feel like I'm just walking through a cemetery. I absolutely feel like I'm embracing some of the greatest art form. And the headstones, just to me, are just the provenance.
Yeah, I was in Seattle recently, and there's another cemetery there, and it was the same setting. The plants were just as curated and cared for as the headstones, and it created more of a relaxing atmosphere in the pretty grounds.
I often wonder, I was there, my sister and I and Logan, we were there when Notre Dame caught on fire a few years ago. We were in Paris, France at the time. And I went back there this year when they finally opened up Notre Dame again. And you could see the difference from the old Notre Dame to the new Notre Dame, the things that they put in, but you could see the old ways. They just cannot, in their best way, could not duplicate the old Notre Dame. They have less tools, they don't have AI, they don't have all the technology that we have access to, but how were they able, from the pyramids to the Pieta, Michelangelo, when you look at the Sistine Chapels, how were they able to do that with so little to work with?
Pretty much from the beginning of time, going back to my perspective, I think God loves variety, and I think that they then probably recognized some of the similarities that I'm speaking of. I would assume God was a creator, and so people that are in art and create have that perspective, and everything that we do, whether it's our suits or our cars, now in the present, even back then, it was all inspired. There's got to come from a level of inspiration, really. So I would think that I would think the recreation of Notre Dame, you can't duplicate the great past. What you can do is you can learn through art from the past and you can then create it in a new realm or a new genre, but you could still represent that. But that's a huge challenge there. I mean, that's a good question.
Yeah, you know, I want to challenge you. If someone says to you, Eric, my palm needle bushes don't look well, what can I do to change that?
I would first ask, what are the cultural conditions surrounding it? Have you done the soil test? The simple things that we learned. And it all starts, a lot of it, with the science. Plants need sun, water, and nutrients. You solve those three things, you'll have a healthy plant.
You know, it's so important, the nutrients, the fertilizer, the water, the sun, because for me, I kind of have a green thumb. I have a lot of plants in my home, I would mention. It's almost a hobby, but it's so second nature, it's crazy. Because I only work once a month. I only have my gardeners treat them every so often. And I don't know the last time, and I've been doing this for time, I've ever had a dead leaf. It's just almost miraculous. It's crazy. Look at Eric. He's finding it hard to believe. It is hard to believe. I find it hard to believe. It is just, and here's the thing about it. What is crazy about it, I'll tell you this. Sometimes because I travel so much, I write down every time. When I water them, when I do write everything down. It's the way I can keep up with it. But sometimes I'm so overwhelmed, I can literally hear them crying out to me. Literally. Mm-hmm. I can. It just shows you how connected we are with nature.
Absolutely. And that connection is one that I personally formed when I was really young, and that's what got me into horticulture. Was every afternoon I would go outside and work with my grandfather in the yard. We would wait till my grandmother would leave, and we would dig up the plants, rearrange them, because she would get mad that we had changed everything around. But that connection is formed, I believe, at a young age, and people are connected to plants and nature.
Yeah, your artistry, your sculpturing is unbelievable. There's a lot of toil. I remember reading the book and studying at the Sistine Chapel of what Michelangelo had to do to start it all over again. Is it ever perfect?
No, not in the artist's eye. It's interesting. Sometimes I have people come into my studio and I'm working on something. They say, "How are you doing that?" And I think about that. And if you could see the process, the way I do it, while I'm working alone, and you take the clay and you'll have a piece, and you'll just completely revise it. You'll take and chop the clay off, and you'll redo it and redo it and redo it and rework it. And for me, it's a little thing I do. And every time I start a new piece, or every time I go to work on something after I take a break, I say a little prayer, and I just ask that God can help me, give me the tools and the vision. And then you step away and you come back, and then you get frustrated. You come back in, you get right into it, and then things will click. And then you step back, but you're continually refining. And I think artists are sometimes perfectionists. We're our own worst enemies, in that regard. So, but to answer your question, it's sometimes a challenge to complete a piece. So.
Well, sometimes you have to remove a stump. Sometimes you have to remove sick mountain ash. There's just some things you have to do. But finally, before I say goodbye to both of you and Alfonso Miller joins us, if you ever said this is perfect, there's nothing I can do to improve this landscaping, this gardening.
No, gardens are constantly evolving, and that's part of what I love about it. It's a never-ending, you're constantly chasing that perfection.
All I can tell you is this. I often reach the point where I say, I don't need to do anything else. This is as perfect can be. It may not be perfect for you, but it's perfect for me. And that's what I get to, and that's why I can just move on. I want to thank you both for joining us, talking about your craft. How can somebody reach you?
HealyHorticulture.com.
Healy, H-E-A-L-Y?
Yep.
And you?
Athena-garden.com.
Okay. A-T-H-E-N-A?
Just like the Greek goddess, A-T-H-E-N-A,
okay.
-garden.com.
All right. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you, sir.
We'll be back. I'm Armstrong Williams.
As a home buyer, you need a lender who cares about your home ownership dreams. United Security Financial has been helping families secure their dream homes for 30 years. We're a national fair practice lender that provides affordable mortgages and low down payment programs to eligible home buyers. To To learn how United Security Financial can help you secure your dream home, call 1-800-373-4186.
You know, Alfonso, it's such an honor having you on. You're such a success. We grew up in the same community, members of St. James AME Church. My sister Lynn thinks you walk on water, and you own sites and Insights Tours in Charleston, South Carolina. In fact, you have the most sought after tour in Charleston, South Carolina. Talk about your business and how it all started.
Well, first of all, I think it all started from high school with my love for history and taking South Carolina history. Then secondly, after attending college, Baptist College, which is now Charleston Southern, and graduated, stayed, and I had that passion for history, so I became a licensed tour guide, certified licensed tour guide, and eventually started Sites and Insights Tours. And I've been a tour guide for 38 years now.
So tell us about your Charleston tours, because everybody wants to go to Charleston.
Well, actually, it's a tour company that emphasizes on the Black History, Gullah Geechee, Porgy and Bess tour, and this tour covers the city of Charleston and James and Johns Islands.
So what does it consist? What does it consist of? What do people find and learn? Because I mean, people rave about it.
Well, people learn about Porgy and Bess, first of all, the opera. Most people have no clue that when Fantasia sang Summertime on American Idol, where that song came from. So it's one of the most popular songs in the opera, Porgy and Bess. Then secondly, people want to hear about Charleston's history. It's one of the most historical cities in the world. People want to hear about the Gullah Geechee culture. So I talk about all those things on my tour.
So talk about the origins of Porgy and Bess.
Well, first of all, for 35 years, I was a member of an old singing group called the Choralist Music Club. Of course, we're not in existence anymore. So the opera was actually started from the history of the Gullah Geechee people who actually lived at what we call Catfish Shores. In that area, there were many, many black street vendors, and one became very popular in the early 1920s. His name was Samuel Smalls. He was born on James Island. He had polio as a child. He was often seen in the downtown streets on a cart pulled by a goat. So a white man, DeBose Hayward, who lived at the time at 76 Church Street, which was down the street from this black tenement known as Catfish Row, wrote a story about Smalls and called him Porgy. And George Gershwin, he was Jewish, he read the story, made contact with Hayward, came to Charleston in the summer of 1934, and with the help of the white Haywards, he wrote the opera Porgy and Bess.
Wow, what history. You know, Charleston, you also collect art.
That's correct. I collect lots of black art. Jonathan Green, John W. Jones, and several other artists.
You know, in terms of your tour, it's such a part of Charleston. You can find it on the tour guide. Even though Charleston has such a rich history, what makes it so unique and separates it from other port cities in the country?
I think we have so much living history there. A lot of cities, people will say, well, this site used to be here, that site used to be here, but in Charleston, there's so many things that are still present, so much living history, so many buildings that's still been standing since the 1700s and 1800s. Thanks to preservation groups and societies who saw a need to preserve Charleston's rich history. And people come to learn all about it because so much is visible.
You know, the other thing I think that people remember about Charleston, you know, our cousin Clementi Pinckney,
Yes.
who was killed in that massacre, is just the way the community handled that. Not the violence, not the rioting, not the burning of the city, but they forgave, they healed, and it was such an example from a Mother Emmanuel's church that it just resonated with the world, because it's something like almost unheard of.
Oh, absolutely. And the first, and it doesn't annoy me, one of the things that most people say when they get on a tour bus, are we going to get to go by that church? Now, they may not know the name of it, but they know what happened there. And I tell people, absolutely, even before the shooting happened, Mother Emanuel's history was always a part of Charleston's history, a part of the tour, because of its rich history with the Denmark-Vesey connection and the founding of the Citadel, the military college of South Carolina.
Mother Emanuel.
Yes, the history, because that's the congregation that Denmark-Vesey preached to while planning a slave plot. Back in 1822, he was this black man who came enslaved with his master from St. Thomas in the Virgin Islands, came around 1783. 1799, he won $1,500 in the East Bay Street lottery. He purchased his freedom with $600. He was unable to buy his family freedom, so he eventually starts a slave plot. And it's believed that between 7,000 and 9,000 enslaved Africans from within a 50-mile radius of the city knew about the plot. But it was not successful because 3 blacks told on him. 2 enslaved Africans who were loyal to their masters and wasn't free black. So it caused a chain reaction of arrest. A total of 131 persons were arrested. 35 were found guilty and hanged July 2nd, 1822, including Vesey, the ringleader. And because of this, it led to the founding of the Citadel. First of all, Vesey became a local preacher in the AME church. So that was Emmanuel's congregation at the time. So he used the church to have his meetings because the church during that time period was the only place that blacks could gather in large numbers and whites not be suspicious of them.
You know, the other thing I love about Charleston is its legacy with tennis and how it starts the clay season for the World Women Tennis Association. Just amazing when it comes to sports, and also Charleston's rich history surrounding churches.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And also a part of my tour, I conduct what we call a Charleston Amen Church Tour. I cover about 30 churches downtown. Each church has its own unique history.
So how can people find out more about you and the tour?
Okay, well, my company's name is Sights and Insights Tours. Of course, I have a brochure here that I'll just, Sights and Insights Tours. My cell number is on the tour card. Also, people can visit my website, sightsandinsightstours.com. And
how do you continue to have such passion for what you do?
Because I love doing what I do. It's my fun job. I love history, I love people, and to do this, you can't be successful at it unless you do both love history and love people. And love talking about Charleston history. It's very visible, and I love it.
You know, did you ever think it would just grow to such to be an international brand that it is today?
Not when I started 38 years ago, not to this point, but now it's not going anywhere. I mean, people are steadily coming, and that's a great thing.
And how often are the tours? Are they daily, several times a day?
I tour almost every day, almost every day. There are times when I take breaks, but I tour almost every day.
But you're always, nobody but you.
Well, I have a few other tour guides who help me as I need them, especially when it comes to stop on bus tours. Let's say if you came with a chartered bus and then there were 2 buses, I might stop on one bus, conduct the tour, and then somebody else on another. But I also own a 25-passenger bus that I conduct most of my tours on.
Well, listen, man, I cannot, Sights and Tours, I cannot.
Sights and Insights.
Sights and Insight Tours. I just cannot thank you enough for joining us from our hometown. We wish you well, and I know more people are going to flood to Charleston to be a part of your rich history tour. I want to thank everybody for joining us today for this edition of the Armstrong Williams Show from our Myrtle Beach studios in South Carolina. Thank you.